Have a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing. One of the central principles of my life is that no one knows enough to be a pessimist about anything. And that each and every one of us, when we close our mind to what is possible for us or what is possible for humanity, closes off the genius that resides and lives in each and every one of us. Having an open mind doesn't necessarily mean finding fault with all of the things that you've been taught by others. It means opening yourself up to the potentiality and the possibility that anything and everything is possible. So having a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing really means finding within ourselves the ability to get rid of a trait that I find so common in the contemporary world. Do you know that most people that I meet spend their lives looking for occasions to be offended? They actually are out there hoping that they can find some reason to be offended. And there's no shortage of reasons. They're out there everywhere. The way this person dressed, what this person said, they turn on their TV, they hear the news, they're offended by this, someone used language that they didn't like, someone doesn't share the same customs that you, and people all day long. In fact, if you keep track tomorrow, you will find probably 100 reasons that you can go around being offended. But a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing is a mind that says, I'm never looking for anything to be offended by. And that whatever anybody else out there has to say, my response to that is, that's an interesting point of view. I've never considered that before.
Most people are victims because of choice or because of expectations. People expect to be victimized. They think they're not very strong or they're not very capable or they don't have very high aspirations. If there's anything that I think people suffer from in this country, it's that not that they fail to achieve so much as that they fail to aspire. They don't have a sense of their own internal capacities and greatness or abilities to handle just about any situation.
Well, we've talked about that before, but how can a book tell you how to do this?
Well, a book can't do it for you. I'm the first one to admit that. Absolutely. Just like going to a psychiatrist cannot make your life any better. I'm convinced of that. Nor can a Valium or anything like that. It has to be something that you do internally yourself. It can provide you guidelines. It's very much like if your car breaks down and you got your repair manual there. You can say, well, why isn't this manual fixing my car? Manuals don't fix cars. They can just give you the information. You either do it to yourself or you don't.
But can the book give you a way to rate yourself as far as how victimized you really are?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people are very critical of books and self-help books and whether or not they can really be helpful to people and so on. And I know in my own life I've been really influenced by some very significant writing of people who've lived before me. A lot of poets, a lot of the great, even Mark Twain, reading people. Books have really influenced my life. These kinds of books influence people's lives today. I know it from the mail that I get. And
well, what's step one? After you've read the book.
Step one is to change your expectations around. Like every situation you go into, all right, you got who victimizes people the most in our culture? Family members, your parents telling you that you ought to be the way they want you to be, your children telling you that they expect you to make their lunches for them, they expect you to pick up after them, and so on. Bureaucrats, our government, clerks, people like that, waiters, tipping when you're getting bad service, all of these kinds of things. You just change around your expectations. You say, I am not going to allow this person or this institution to get me. I'm not going to try to change it for the whole world.
But Wayne, how specifically, I feel sorry for mothers who are victimized every day. I mean, by husbands and by kids. They have no self left. They give everything,
but they've taught themselves that. They've said to their husbands or their children, it's okay, you can push me around. If you want to get angry at me or upset at me, then I'll take that. And I believe you get treated in life the way you teach people to treat you. If you've taught people that you're going to be a dish rag or you're going to be somebody who's going to clean up all the time and you're not going to have any esteem for yourself, then naturally people are going to come along and just do that.
But it's a desire to be approved, to be loved, So now you're saying no more Mr. Nice Guy.
I don't think people are loved. I think it's a myth that you love dish rags or that you love people. I think people respect strength, not weakness. And you stand up to somebody, you say what's really on your mind, and at first people will feign it. They'll fake it. They'll say, "Oh my God, you've really hurt my feelings." That's a strategy. That's a technique to get you. If I can get you to come over and visit me on Sunday by using guilt, and saying, "Oh, if you don't visit me, it's okay. I went through 18 hours of child labor, but that's okay. And if you don't come, then, and I can use all of this stuff, and you'll come. Well, I'm going to continue to use that. But if you say, wait a second, I've got a right to decide where I'm going to be on Sunday, and I can't be there this Sunday, and you're firm about that. What happens is after a while, people respect you more.
What happens at work, though, when you go down and tell that to your boss?
The very same thing I'm talking about.
You're fired.
No, hardly ever. And even if you are, it's generally for the better. Even on the job, people respect strength. You don't want somebody on the job who's always going to be a yes man, who's always going to, if you're trying to run the show and you want to know how things are going and what the reactions are, and you got a lot of yes men around you, which is like what Nixon had around him. Everybody just going around saying yes sir, yes. And you find that the show's ratings are going down and down and down because people aren't willing to be honest with you. You want to have a producer or director or staff people who are going to say, look, this is what you're doing that's not working, this is what's effective. You don't have to be nasty or
Yeah, but
boorish.
we expect that. But the question I have is, if you've set a pattern in your household as a mother, or even in a relationship with a man, or vice versa, and you've been the giver and the nice guy, all of a sudden when you make that change, then don't people pull back and say, wait, you don't love me anymore?
Yeah, they do, and that's a technique too. That's a strategy to get you to go back to being a slave again. And when you suddenly say to them, I love you, it has nothing to do with love, it has to do with my interest in being my own person, and you're using guilt saying, you don't love me, isn't going to work anymore. How many times in your life have you gone out with a man when you were dating, or if you're dating now, have somebody called you up and you don't want to go out with this person, nice guy, everything is, but there's nothing there.
And you can't say no.
Yeah, and you just say, oh, well, and then there you are, 3 weeks later, you're going out on a date, and this guy is coming on to you, and you're just saying, what am I doing here?
I know.
And learning how to just say, no, I don't want to go, and he says, well, you're hurting my feelings, and I'll probably have to put my head in the oven, and, any number of things. You say, all right, I'll go, anything. And this is that's a victim status. You've got to learn not to make commitments for things.
Actually, what you're saying, be a little selfish, huh?
Selfish, not inconsiderate, yes, but selfish, definitely, in the sense
your own time.
Yeah, it's your life, it's your time, it's the only shot you get at this life, and why should anybody else run it for you?
It seems like there's an awful lot of selfish people in the world already.
Well, selfish, when you use selfish, generally you mean inconsiderate, stepping on other people, not caring about others. I don't believe in that. I don't do that myself. I spend most of my life in the service of other people. But it's because if you love yourself, you can give love away. If you can't give away what you don't have, if you don't feel good about
that's
you.
step one. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Number two.
It's like going out and practicing, really standing up for the things. Somebody's out there.
You mean go practice being insulted?
If it's necessary, but it isn't necessary. It's I have a thing called being quietly effective, John, and it's like, a lot of people misconstrue their goals in life. They pull into a gas station, all right, and they want their windshield washed. The guy is too busy. He doesn't care. He's not interested. He doesn't wash your windshield. This person who wants his windshield washed forgets his goal is just to have a windshield washed. That's all. He now says, I'm going to reform that guy. How dare he treat me that way? Who does he think? And and this guy's behavior is suddenly controlling them emotionally, and your goal is just to simply say, look, would you mind washing my windshield? You don't have to give a lecture. If the guy says, look, I'm too busy, you say, well, now I'm going to talk to the manager or whatever. You go on to the next step. Or you get out and wash it yourself if necessary. But you don't allow other people's behavior to be the controlling thing of your emotions in your life, whether that's that clerk there or whether it's your husband or your children.
Well, you said something about explanation. What about people that feel like they've got to give a long, drawn-out explanation with 1,000 reasons and excuses?
They become victims, and then somebody at the end, you know what they'll say? I just don't understand you. Oh my God, he doesn't understand me. I better straighten up. I better go back and I better start washing his underwear.
Confident versus cocky. I mean, confident versus insulting. I mean, is there a fine line? Do you have to relearn that?
The very specific line. Confident means standing up for what you believe. Cocky or abusive or conceited means trying to convince other people of how terrific you are. If you run your life on your inner signals, you don't have any need to show anybody else how great you are. If you're confident, you just simply do it. The basic thing that Neville taught me, and a lot of this is from the teachings of Neville, Neville Goddard, who died in the 1970s. He basically said that all of us have within us this amazing capacity to manifest and attract anything that we want into our life. So
how we call it, what words that we use. We have to be able to say, you know, in The Secret they say you get what you want, you know, and what is missing. And what Neville said, and what has come to me, and what I got from the I Am discourses, and what I get from the New Testament, which I read before I did this, is that you say, I will attract into my life what I am, not what I want. And I am capable of attracting all things that the source is capable of attracting. So that's the difference. It's like you get what you are rather than what you want. So you want to become. You can't go around and ask these divine beings, you know, angels, whatever you want to call them,
who are right here all the time.
Always. You
right
can't.
Here,
you can't
right
ask
here,
them to help me out. You have to become like they are. That when you become angelic, when you become a divine being yourself, when you are giving, when you are serving, when you are in that place, they will come to you. That's what happened to you in India. Mm-hmm. You then begin to see yourself in everything. That's what the Tao Te Ching teaches as well. Yes. They call it your original nature. Your original nature is reverence for all of life, gentleness, kindness, and service towards others. That's Lao Tzu, 500 years before the birth of Christ, saying that's our original nature.
Yes.
Reverence for all of life, gentleness, kindness, service towards others, giving, offering, serving. And when you get to that place where you no longer have any judgment within you towards any of God's children, that means no condemnation, no criticism, no judgment towards anyone, even the Osama bin Laden. And if enough of us get this message, Oprah,
yes.
if enough of us get it.
My friend Byron Katie says that to believe that you need what you don't have is the definition of insanity. To believe that you need what you don't have. Because you're already here, so you've already proven that you don't need it. So to go around believing that I can't be happy, fulfilled, you know, whatever it is, unless I get this stuff that I don't already have, it's a complete and total illusion. It's a thought that isn't even true. There's no truth to it whatsoever. You don't need anything. And when you get that, the irony is you're no longer attached. Your total life is just about living those virtues. How can I serve? How can I be sincere? How can I be gentle? How can I be supportive? And thinking like that. And that's how I think now. And because of that, I'm in meaning. And being in meaning, the times that I was in ambition, you know, is delivering more and more and more and more of what I wanted so much then. And now that I'm not attached to it, it's like I can be like the cat. You know, I can just go about my business and just let it follow after me. So what I say to people who really want to access the transition from ambition to meaning, if they really want to access it, is to get your thoughts off of yourself. I do it on the radio every Monday. I mean, it's like all my questions, you know, all the questions are about why can't I manifest this? Why can't I have that? This isn't working, and so on. And my response back to them all the time, over and over again, is take what it is that you would really like to attract into your life, whatever it is, whether it's wealth, a job, you know, money, a nice watch, a new car, whatever it is, and want it more for somebody else than you want it for yourself. Just want it more. Just think about that and think about how much joy it would give you to be able to put your attention on that. And just keep your thoughts on that. You know, take your thoughts off of yourself and start living the four virtues. Start being sincere, start being supportive, you know, start having this reverence for their life and so on. And just shift off of what's in it for me, you know, and how much am I going to get, and why isn't it here fast enough, and why is theirs shinier than mine, and you know, and so on. Off of that, and begin to project that, and do that in this world. I don't care whether you're a school teacher. I don't care if you're a dental hygienist or if you're a carpenter or you know whatever it is out there that you are doing. If you can take your attention, if you want the door to open, to meaning, then the only way that door is going to open is if you understand that you have to leave your attachment to this grossly world of the material things and what's in it for me and how much am I getting, and shift your energy, your thoughts onto how may I offer, how may I serve.
So this was something that Portia Nelson, who I knew, who passed away a few years back, 10 years back now. She lived up in Seattle. And she was at a seminar,
and they were asked to write the autobiography of their life in five verses, 5 chapters. So, and they gave them only like cards this size. Actually, they were smaller than this. They were 3 by 5 cards. So write out chapter 1 of your life and just go to where you are today. And I remember doing this very same thing, but what she wrote was so brilliant that I asked her daughter if we could put it on public television, which I did on the most recent show, and we made a contribution to Portia's work. So this is what she wrote down in the chapter 5 of her life. Chapter 1, she said, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault, and it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time for me to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am, and it is my own fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. Finally, I walk down another street. Isn't that great?
There are no justified resentments. And this is a very difficult principle for many people to get, but one that I believe very strongly in. I was in a group one time of drug addicts and alcoholics. And I was one of the people that was a sponsor and leading this group. And the sign on the wall said, there are no justified resentments in this group. And what I said to that group that night was, no matter what anybody says to you here, no matter what kind of anger comes directed towards you, no matter how much hate you may encounter showing up in your life, there are no justified resentments. Meaning that if you carry around resentment inside of you about anything or about anyone, and I'm talking about the person that you lent money to and hasn't paid you back, I'm talking about the person in your life that you feel was abusive in your life, I'm talking about the person who walked out on you and left you for somebody else. I'm talking about all of the things that you have justified in your heart and in your life that you have the right to be resentful about. And I'm suggesting to you that those resentments will always end up harming you and creating in you a sense of despair. I've often said that no one ever dies from a snake bite. The snake bite will never kill you. You cannot be unbitten. Once you're bitten, you're bitten. But it's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite that will end up destroying you.
I used to say that before I had children, I had 8 theories about how to raise children. And now I have 8 children and no theories. All right? But one of the things I know about children is that no one likes being told what to do. And this isn't just children, this is all of us. One of my favorite songs is a song from when I was back in high school. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Boy, you know it. Don't fence me in. Don't restrict me. Don't put Don't put boundaries on me. Don't tell me what I can do and what I can't do. Don't tell me how to be there. Don't tell me what to wear, what to think. Don't tell me even how to do yoga. Don't tell me, I don't want to be told. This is the soul speaking, always. The soul is constantly having a desire to expand and grow. And anything or anyone that comes into your life that attempts to do that, you will find yourself fighting it and reaching back.
The obscure outlast the obvious. Try to become a little more obscure, a little less interfering, a little less notice me, a little less, one of the specific kinds of things that you can do is just as you're about, when somebody else is talking, just as you're about to interject what you've been thinking about for the whole time, waiting for them to stop talking, just stop, to bite your tongue and say, tell me more. Or, that's very interesting. I have never heard that point of view before. Even if they totally, completely disagree with everything that you stand for, to be willing to listen, to be able to stop. Practice it. I practiced it when I did these verses of the Tao. I practiced it every single day while I was working on that. Just staying obscure. And for me, that's not always so easy because of just being recognized wherever I go. And if I saw someone who was about to recognize me, I would just put my head down. I would just walk a little bit past them like something. Right now, I just want to be anonymous. Right now, I want to be obscure. The next principle I call don't die with your music still in you. And who better to quote than Thoreau right here in Concord when he talked about some of us hear a different drummer and we must march to the music that we hear. But all of you, everybody watching, everybody here in this beautiful parish, all of you have some music playing. And all of you have a heroic mission. There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it. And too many of us are afraid to listen to that music and march to it. You out there, I know you have a book you wanted to write. I know there's a composition you wanted to compose. I know there's a song you want to sing someplace. Maybe you want to raise horses out in Montana. Or maybe you want to open up an ice cream shop on Cape Cod. Who knows what it may be. Maybe you just want to travel and see the world. Maybe you want to go into a relationship with someone but you've been afraid to, but your heart says it's the right thing to do. All of us feel something. And in Leo Tolstoy's famous novel, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, he asks this question that would be terrifying to me. He says, as he has his accountant from Moscow lying on his deathbed, contemplating the horror of this question, what if my whole life has been wrong? I've known what my music is. It's playing right now. As I stand here in front of you with these cameras and in this place, and as I sit down and write my books and tell the world what I know are my truths, I feel always completely on purpose and fulfilled. And no time will I ever come to the end of my life and say, what if my whole life has been wrong? Whoever you are, whatever that music is, however distant it may sound, however strange, however weird others may interpret it to be, don't get to the end of your life and know that you're going to leave and not have it played yet. Don't die with your music still in you. Thinking small is what gets great things done. Verse 63. Achieve greatness in little things. Take on difficulties while they are still easy. Do great things while they are still small. The sage, one of my daughter's names, the sage, does not attempt anything very big and thus achieves greatness. Greatness comes from being in the moment, here, present, in the now. The sage confronts difficulties but never experiences them. This is the idea of thinking small. And finally, I'd like to see you change from this thought. Change from seeing yourself as separate to seeing yourself as connected to everyone and everything in the universe. You can't give away what you don't have. Now, it sounds ridiculous, okay? But it's more than what meets the ear as you hear this. You can't give away what you don't have. People who are not good at giving away love can't give away love because they don't have it to give away. If I want to give you a dozen oranges, I can't give you those dozen oranges unless I go out and pick up 12 oranges someplace. Otherwise, all it is just empty rhetoric. And the same thing is true of virtually everything in your life. You can't give away love for others if you don't have love in here to give away. If what you have in here is contempt, if what you have in here is anger, if what you have in here is fear, then these are the things you're going to be giving away in your life.
The second thing that the ego teaches us is that who I am is not only what I have, but who I am is what I do, what I accomplish. And so we spend a big hunk of our lives believing that the way that we become, quote, successful, happy, fulfilled, self-actualized, whatever it might be, is on the basis of what I accomplish, what my resume looks like, how many promotions I get. And so we send our children off to school and we ask them to learn to identify themselves on how much they get and what they accomplish. Your grades become more important than what it is that you are studying. What you own, what clothes you wear, what labels you have, and so on. And we become obsessed with this kind of absurdity. And this is the false self at work.
Creative visualization is what we're talking about here. The imagery or the image that you have of anything in your life is really like mental behavior. It's like going out and practicing. If you go out and practice with a basketball, shooting free throws over and over again, that's physical practice. Imagery is mental practice. It's mental behavior. When you have an image that you can succeed at something, when you have an image that you can do it rather than that you can't do it, when you get into your car and you have an image that you're going to find a parking place rather than that there'll be no place to park, so you're not looking for no place to park, you will start acting on the image that you have, very much like you will start acting on the practice that you have when you're shooting baskets or when you're hitting a forehand or working on your soup.
It was Thomas Troward. I don't know. He did some lectures on mental science way back in the 1907, 1908. He was from Scotland. And one of the things that he said is that the law of flotation was not discovered by the contemplation of the sinking of things. So that, like before the 15th and 16th centuries, all of the ships were made out of wood. Not because iron wasn't available and steel wasn't available, but because there was a belief that wood floated. So therefore you had to make ships out of things that floated. That's literally how and then someone came along and said that it has absolutely nothing to do with what things are made out of. It has to do with the amount of water that is being dispersed. That's what determines whether something will float or not. And I think about that all the time because it's in the contemplation of what you desire that you create what it is that you want to have for yourself. It's in your willingness to contemplate it, and nothing more, according to Troward and mental science. So that I think about the Wright brothers, 100 or so years ago. It's like, and I said the law of flying was not discovered by the contemplation of the staying on the ground of things. So that these were two people. Like for me, to figure out how to get an airplane to fly, and my limited knowledge of all of that, I would probably have contemplated the staying on the ground of things. Like this is what happened. But there's somebody came along and contemplated the idea that if you get enough speed going and you have the right design and you get pressure underneath something like this and you get that this thing is going to lift off the other. Somebody had to contemplate that idea. And everybody who contemplated that it wasn't possible, that it couldn't work, was a part of why flying didn't take place, because there was no new law discovered in the early part of the 20th century, any more than electricity was discovered by Thomas Edison or anyone like that. I mean, the ability to have electricity has always been there. Somebody has to contemplate So it's like in your own personal life, your willingness to contemplate yourself as a person who is capable of attracting into your life what you want, having the kind of relationships that you want, being able to have abundance where scarcity always exists. All you have to do is begin the process by being willing to contemplate the presence of that in your life. And I've always been a person that I can remember throughout my life as someone who could contemplate myself being able to do things that most people couldn't. And I can give you a good example. When my mother got us all back together, and we were living in Detroit, on the east side of Detroit, and we got a new television set. It was a black and white. It was a screen about this big. It was an Admiral, and we had it in our home, and it was like, oh my God, black and white television. You remember Uncle Milty and all and so on. And there was a guy that was on TV. His name was Steve Allen, and he was on The Tonight Show. And I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I was born in 1940, so I was 51 or 52. And I used to stay up every night and watch The Tonight Show. Even though I had to go to school the next day, there was just something about that show and, all of the characters and smock, and all the things that Steve Allen would do on it. And I would come down, when I would be talking the next day, and I would be telling my mother and my two brothers that when I do The Tonight Show, this is what I would say. I wouldn't have said what Louis and I say, the way reacted, how he reacted to that. I would have said this, and I used to do this, and my brothers and my mother would say, "That's just Wayne. He's just nutty. He thinks he's on the Tonight Show. He thinks he's going to do the Tonight Show." And I would go up into my room at on this little tiny house that we lived in, a little 2-bedroom house that 5 of us lived in because my mother remarried, and I would see myself doing the Tonight Show. I would just practice it, and Steve Allen became someone that I was really enamored of. Well, fast forward, 30 years or whatever, and I've written a book, Your Erroneous Zones, and the Tonight Show calls, and they ask me if I would like to come on and do it. So I do my first stint on the Tonight Show. I did the show like 37 times over a period of 3 or 4 years with all these different hosts, but Johnny Carson was on, and the first guest on the very first show when I did the show was Steve Allen. And it was like something clicked in me that I had contemplated that as a child. I had always had a knowing, and I can remember sitting there talking to Johnny about this thing that, and Steve Allen was sitting there right next to me, and we were talking about that kind of thing. So that by putting my attention on something, it wasn't some deliberate thing that I was doing, when I was 11 or 12 years old that was designating that I was going to be a person who was going to be appearing on talk shows 30 years from now. It was just an awareness a willingness to contemplate myself in that kind of a place. And I think the power of contemplation is the thing that most people haven't harnessed yet. And when you harness it in your life, there's absolutely no limit to what you can attract into your life. If you absolutely stay focused on what it is that you're going to manifest and attract, you're not going to do it in your time. Jackson Browne sings a song. He says, "And creation reveals its secrets by and by." I mean, you can't push the river. You can't. It's all done in divine time, but it will show. It will show. It will manifest. It will attract itself. And I'm never surprised any longer about anything that I put my thoughts on that I can attract it into my life. I just absolutely know that law of attraction and that it absolutely works.
The way to this higher place within ourselves is understanding 2 very important words. These words are the basis for a children's book that I've just done called I Am. Why 2 little words mean so much. Any moms right here in the front? You a mom? Here, would you like to have this for your baby? You're welcome. God bless you. Namaste. So, let me just take you back for a few moments here. Back before Lao Tzu. Now, Lao Tzu was here on this planet at the time of the Warring States in China in 500 BC, approximately the same time that the Bhagavad Gita was also being created in India, the Song of the Lord. 800 years, 8 centuries before that, 1,300 years before the birth of Christ, comes one of the most ancient, if not the most ancient spiritual texts extant on the planet today. It's called the Torah. the first 5 books of the Old Testament. In the second book of the Torah, Exodus, Moses is, well, you know the story of Moses, but if you don't, let me refresh you. At the time of Moses' birth, the Pharaoh, who had held so many of the Israelites captive and enslaved, had ordered that all male babies to be born from Israelite mothers, because he had heard that there was someone coming that could be a danger to his power. He ordered that all male babies be executed. Well, Moses' mother gave birth, and she just couldn't stand the idea of this baby being killed by the soldiers. So she wrapped him up in a blanket and put him in a basket, must have been waterproof, and floated him down the Nile. Moses, this little baby, was discovered by a woman who captured him, picked him up, and fell so in love with him that she decided to raise him as her own. It turns out that this was the daughter of the Pharaoh. So Moses' grandfather is the Pharaoh who has ordered him to be killed, but he doesn't know this. At about the age of 18, Moses gets into a fight, and with one of the people, one of the soldiers who is trying to actually punish and kill one of the Israelites. And so Moses fights him and kills him and has to run away because he knows what his punishment will be. He runs away to the Sinai, and for the next 40 years, he is a shepherd. He marries a woman named Zipporah. They have all of these children. He's a shepherd. He's out wandering about, according to this ancient text. One day, he comes across a bush, a burning bush. But the bush is not being consumed. It is just continuing to burn. And he looks at this, and suddenly the bush begins to speak. And as legend tells us, this is God speaking to Moses and saying to Moses, I have some instructions for you. I'll give it to you the way it is written. I just love this. So God calls out to Moses from this bush and says, Moses, Moses. And Moses responds with the words, here I am. These are the first words he speaks to God. Do not come closer, he said. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he continues, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. So God gives him this instruction. You are to go and free the people of Israel. So Moses says to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He answered, I will certainly be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you will all worship God at this mountain. Then Moses asked God, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I tell them? Now, the only place in all the spiritual texts where God gives his name is right here in this passage. Same name that you have. God replies to Moses, I am that I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the Israelites, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, and this is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation to come, which is our generation. All right? So, the name of God is I am. That I am. Now, every time you use the name I am, you are using the name of God. How do you use this name? Do you say, I am sick? Many of you know that I have been diagnosed with leukemia. And I generally start out my talks by saying, I am well. I am perfect health. I am that. I am. That is my affirmation. That is how I live. That is how I breathe. That is how I believe. Now, in the book of Joel, there's a line that says, let the weak man say, I am strong. Now, what I want, one of the things that I want to leave you with here in the time that I have with you today is for you to become conscious of how you use this term, I am. I have a CD, along with my friend James Twyman, that is, what they did with this is, it comes from the Moses Code, which is a book I encourage you to look at, by James Twyman. And what they did is they took the sound in Hebrew of the letters that mean I am that I am. Supposedly, this is what God said to Moses. And they have associated the sound with what those letters meant back 1,300 years before the birth of Christ, or 3,300 years ago, and come up with the sound. The sound is a meditation that I do every day. And what I recommend that you do, you want this, don't you? Oh, you have it? Oh, you have it, great. All right, you got it. So what I encourage you to do in terms of manifesting, before I get into the principles, is to take out a piece of paper sometime when you're at home, and it sounds like a silly thing to do, but I want you to do it. And I want you to write at the top of that page the word that, T-H-A-T, that, okay? And under that heading, whatever it is that you would like to attract or manifest into your life, I would like you to just write that down, all right? So if it's a job that you want, if it's a relationship that you want, if it's a healing that you want, if it's abundance that you want to attract into your life, whatever it is, just place it underneath that. And come to a place in your life where it is spoken about in the book of Romans, in the New Testament. He calls those things which do not exist as though they did. You must be able to get to this place in your life where you don't use the evidence of your senses, what your eyes tell you, what your ears tell you, what your stomach tells you, what you see written down, what the internet tells you. You want to be able to be in a place where you are living from the end as if what you would like to manifest is already there. To make a future dream, a present fact, you must assume the feeling of that wish as already being fulfilled.
What does spiritual film mean to you? And what are your most favorite films about transformation?
Well,
aside from your own.
Yeah, yes. I love, one of my very favorite movies was just recently a spiritual cinema monthly selection, whatever it was. It was called Deja Vu.
Yes.
With Vanessa Redgrave.
Yeah.
That film just blew me away.
Yeah.
I mean, any film that has chase scenes in it, or has violence in it, or guns in it, and so on, I don't really...
You turn off,
I don't even go to them. But like that film got me really thinking about the possibilities. If any of you haven't seen that film.
Well, I think that's the wonderment of a great film like that, is that you begin to think, oh, there's this possibility, which
that all things are possible, and you can make anything happen.
Do you think that films can be used for social change?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. See, one of the reasons I did this film, The Shift, was because I've heard that 10% of the people in our country buy almost 100% of the books, something like 97, 98% of the books, which means that approximately 85 to 90% of the people never buy a book. And I've written lots and lots of books, But
heartbreaking.
those
I come
same
from a
90
book family.
right,
I know.
those same 90% of the people, they go
moved
to the
by
movies.
film. They do.
They go to the movies. So I thought,
Well, I
Make a film.
remember because it was brilliantly done. Because I remember seeing the promotion on the internet for months or
Right.
maybe a year prior to it coming out, and it was very intriguing and
well, there's just great people in it. Michael
Yeah.
Gorjan is a
Yeah,
great
it's
director, and
great.
Portia de Rossi. I mean,
Yeah.
and Michael DeLuise, Dom DeLuise's son.
Yeah.
All of the people in this film are. When I was asked to do the film, I did the film at the age of 68, which meant taking on a whole new career. Because I don't take direction well, and I speak like I'm speaking now in front of
Right.
an audience. I don't
Yes.
use notes.
Right.
But when you
Come
do a
from your
film,
heart.
as you know, having
Yeah.
been in films, you do the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I just decided that this was something that I could do. I just one of the excuses I didn't want to use is I'm too old to learn this, or you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can teach an old dog anything.
Yes.
You know, and so.
I'm sure you were still spontaneous, or anyway.
Well, I
so.
insisted that it be professionally done, and I didn't
Yeah.
want because I've seen a lot of the movies that are called spiritual movies, but the
I agree with
the
you.
quality is just not there, and there's people trying to be actors and they're not, and so on. I wanted it to be a polished, professional film.
Good for you.
And my
That's
goal was to
powerful.
have 10 million people watch it. And I know that will happen. And
it'll happen.
Once you see 10 million in America is pi. Do you remember pi when you were
Yeah.
in geometry?
Yeah, yeah.
3.1416. If you can get 3.1416% of a population to align, all the
Then
rest
all the rest fall into place,
it's
right?
100th
That's
monkey.
right.
They
That's
all
right.
begin to align.
That's right.
So for me, if 10 million people watch The Shift, we can make a shift not only in our country but on our planet as well. And that's why I'm happy to have the film as part of spiritual cinema, because it's another whole bunch
great.
of thousands of people who
Well,
watch it,
you've
tell other people to
inspired the
watch
whole
it.
spiritual cinema circle, fan base. They're totally turned on by the film, so that's wonderful.
That's great.
What films do you think have made a positive impact on society?
Well, I remember what was who was the guy that ran all the way across the country? What was
Forrest Gump?
Forrest Gump.
Right.
Forrest Gump was
Right,
one of those
sure,
kind of films
sure.
that made people look at people who we call special needs and see the beauty and see the joy in them. I think the film about what Tom Hanks was in about the D-Day. Saving Private Ryan.
Yes.
I think that film transformed my brother's life. My brother Dave was in Vietnam, was a Bronze Star winner, and saw such horrible violence. He was a medic there, and he saw hundreds and hundreds of people. And he had never talked about it for 30, 40 years. Never talked about it. He was just so bogged up inside, you couldn't get a word out of him.
Yeah.
He now has Parkinson's disease, and
And so many of those people of that generation weren't allowed to really
Right.
speak about,
And he
it was-
said,
yeah.
"That's what it's like, Wayne.
Yeah.
That's what it's like."
Oh.
I think the film Ghost was one of those films that really, deeply and profoundly touched me in terms of looking at
when it opened that
guidance
window.
from the other
yeah.
side, guidance from the other side,
Yeah.
those kinds of things, and
Yeah.
lots more
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
So what kind of films do you think young people should see, and why?
Well, I think young people should see films that. I don't like to use the word "should," but
I
yeah.
I don't either.
Yeah, but I think young people can benefit greatly by films that give them sort of an expanded view of what is possible in the world, instead of so much of what we think young people want to see, which is a lot of silliness and a lot of violence, and a lot of obscenity and so on.
And also empty, these empty films. It's like there's so much big something happening, but there's not, you look under the surface and there's nothing going on.
I get letters from people who've seen The Shift, and they said they've just had it on in their home, and their teenagers will come in and they'll say, "What are you watching?" And all this is on, and then before you know it, they're
intrigued.
hooked. Yeah, they're hooked, and they're watching it.
hooked
They're
in.
telling other people
Nice.
about it as well.
Nice.
So I think if it can just expand your consciousness and I think film can make a huge difference in transforming the world. I really do. Yeah.
Well, you've kind of answered this question, and you've sort of made this film, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If time, money, or talent were an obstacle, what kind of movie would you like to make? If you got to do it again, and
Well,
you had everything at your disposal. Now, having made a film, you know the opportunity that is.
There were no obstacles. The money wasn't an obstacle, and time wasn't, and
I kind of
everything
thought
else.
that you were going to say
We just did what we wanted to do.
That's wonderful.
And I think this film, and maybe perhaps a follow-up to it,
Yeah.
maybe following the characters or something, is. I would just like to make a film that can make the shift, because we've got to make the shift.
Well, this has been just delightful. I could speak to you forever, but I think we've run out of time. Thank you so much.
I was such an admirer of your grandfather.
Oh,
by the
thank
way.
you.
Such an admirer.
Why I say thank you? Because I'm responsible.
Yeah. Well, I remember reading Islands in the Stream.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, one of the lines that he had in there, a man had just been, he just found out that his son had been killed in the war in Spain, and he that night was out dancing. And someone said to him, "How can you be dancing when you've just found out that news?" And I've never forgotten this. He said, "I decided that sooner or later I would have to get over this, or it would kill me." And he said, "I just picked sooner." And I learned that from your grandfather. Yeah, pick sooner.
Pick sooner.
Yeah, pick sooner.
Giving up your personal history. And I learned it from a man named Carlos Castaneda, who once said that one day, he said, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history. And just like drinking, he said, I gave it up. And that, and only that, has made all the difference in the world. You know, the nice thing about giving up your personal history is that if you don't have a story, you don't have to live up to it. All of us have these bags of manure that we carry around with us called our past, and the people who have done things to us, and the events and the circumstances, all of this stuff that we use and we bond to, and we bond ourselves to these wounds of our past, and we identify ourselves on the basis of these wounds. And every once in a while we set it down and we reach in there and we smear it all over ourselves, and then we wonder, why does my life smell so bad? I don't understand this. When in fact, the now, this moment, merging yourself into the now, means that you may have been in a relationship. I had a woman from Holland who came over to see me, whose husband had left her after 25 years. She had 4 children, and she just had been on the verge of suicide. And she was losing weight, and she was depressed, and she was taking all kinds of drugs for it, and she was getting sicker and sicker because she just couldn't get over it. And she came to a book signing that I was doing at a bookstore down in Florida. And she said, you've got to say something to me. You've got to say something to me that will help me to get over this. And I told her this line. I said, give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. And those 25 years are something, if you want to understand how to do it, think of your past as, oh, this hat. And this is your past. Now, you can't just set this thing down over here and walk away from it and give up your personal history, because you'll always have it there to look back at. What you do is you pick up your past and you embrace it. You understand it, you accept it as, I had to go through these things that I had to go through in order for me to get to this place today, and the evidence for that is that I did. You don't need any more evidence. You did. And then you toss it. You toss it. You embrace it and you toss it. And you merge into the now by giving up your attachment. And some of you have heard me use the metaphor of the wake. Alan Watts talked about the wake is not what drives the boat. The wake is just a trail that is left behind. That's all it is. And so is the wake of your life. And the wake doesn't make the boat go, and neither does the wake of your life the reason why your life is going in the direction that it is. The wake is a trail that is left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that it is the cause of your suffering or your struggles or your difficulty. Give it up. Let it go. Embrace it, understand it, get help doing that if you must, and then move into the now. The next principle I call, it's from a line of Albert Einstein. He said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. In order to work at solving these things called problems in your life, you have to change your mind. It is your mind where they live. It is your mind that created them. There is where you experience them. They're all illusions. You must change your mind. Literally rewrite your agreement with reality. One of the things I had said earlier is that one of the most difficult things to do in the world is to admit that you were wrong. Admitting that you were wrong is nothing more than saying, I have been making choices with my mind that have created things in my life that are not working. And I no longer intend to continue making those choices. I was wrong. You don't have to make a declaration of it. You don't have to go out and feel guilty about it. You just simply say, it didn't work. The relationship that I was in before, I behaved in these ways. I didn't realize that it wasn't working for me. Now I do, and this is where I choose to be now. The secret of a successful relationship is, to me, understanding that you put your attention and your energy in a person on what you love rather than what you don't love. Robert Frost said it so beautifully. We love the things we love for what they are. For what they are. Not for what they ought to be, not for what they used to be, but for what they are. So when you look into the eyes of a person you're in a relationship with, whether it's your children, you catch them doing things right as much as you possibly can. That's oftentimes takes a lot of hunting, but you'll find it. And when you think that my relationship isn't working, remember, it's in my mind. What am I thinking about that person? And if I could just change my mind and put my thoughts on what I love about this person and keep them there, that makes the relationship flourish. And there are people who go through their entire relationship history with no anger, no hatred, no bitterness, and only love. The next principle is, I call it treating yourself as if you already were what you would like to become. In other words, you get out in front of your life and you see yourself as having already what you know you'd like to have and deserve to have. My children know how to do this perfectly. I have a daughter who wanted a prom dress, and the prom dress was way outside the budget that I thought a prom dress should be. Well, I thought a prom dress shouldn't cost over $20, so I do have a problem, right? But I upped it to somewhere around $250. I don't know how much, whatever. To me, it was still more than I paid for my first house, okay? But anyway, she called and said, Dad, this is the only prom dress I could wear. I've got to wear this prom dress. If I don't wear this prom dress, it's just on and on and on with this wonderful. You know, I saw a wonderful book about how to raise teenage daughters. The title of it is Get Out of My Life, but first drive me and Cheryl to the mall. All right, that's the actual title. It's a good book. And so I told Serena, I said, it's just beyond the budget. I've got a certain amount of money that I'm willing to put for it. And she said, but I've already seen myself wearing it. I've already tried it on. I have a picture of myself in the dress in my living room, and I've already showed it to the guy who was taking me to the prom. I mean, it was this whole thing about, and she already saw herself in it. I said, well, if you see yourself in it, then you're going to have to also see yourself as earning the difference between what I'm willing to pay. And she drew up a contract. She went onto the computer, and on the background of the computer, you know where they have these little background things they put on? There was 500 pictures of the dress, all right? And she signed a contract and said, I'll babysit, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I will pay the difference. And she did, and she wore the dress. Because she understood that you treat yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become. There's a genius in you, you have to treat yourself as if you already were that genius. There's something you're completely capable of. See yourself as already there, then you'll act upon those thoughts, because the ancestor to every action, said Emerson, is a thought. The next principle is called treasuring your divinity. Treasuring your divinity. There's a wonderful observation that I saw from Emerson in Self-Reliance. It's about trusting your divinity, knowing that you are connected to your source, knowing that you are a divine creation and that there are no accidents. He said, a man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of the firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his own thought, because it's his own. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. We often reject our thoughts, and we see the things that we think of as grand and as genius, and we reject them because they're our own. Treasuring our divinity instead of being terrified of it. Knowing that I am always connected to my source. There is no way that I cannot, because it is in you, and I am in you, and you are in me, and you can never be separated from it. There is no place that this source is not. It grows everybody's fingernails. It beats everybody's hearts. It digests everybody's foods. It opens all the flowers, and you're always connected to it. And finally, the last principle I call wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. You know, every thought has an energy, just like everything else in the universe. And if you have a thought of shame, it will weaken your muscles. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child who believe in shame and feel ashamed of themselves, every time they think that shameful thought, they will be weakened. And if you have a thought of fear, and if you have a thought of stress, and you have a thought of anguish and anxiety, all of these thoughts and many more are the thoughts that will always weaken you. When you are having a thought that you know is disempowering you, shift it. Shift it to one that is empowering rather than disempowering. And the thoughts that empower are thoughts of neutrality and willingness and love, and ultimately thoughts of divinity. And when you see a troubled person who is out there struggling at the highest level of unity consciousness or God consciousness or spiritual consciousness, you recognize yourself in all that you see. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I am connected to that person. Changing your thoughts. I appeared on the Tonight Show many years ago, several times, quite a few times. And I remember coming home from the Tonight Show, and I was walking along the beach, and they had taped the show the night before, and I was out for a walk, and a woman who lived in the Northeast stopped me, and she said, "Didn't I see you last night on the, how could you be here?" I said, "Well, I flew the red eye, and I was walking along." And she said, "You know, we're moving down here." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like?" And I said to her, I said, "Well, what are they like where you live?" She said, "Well," she said, I live in a very big city." And she said, "They're very pushy. And people are not very kind. And they don't have time for you." And she said, "It's really not very pleasant." She said, "That's one of the reasons I'm leaving there." I said, "Well, that's pretty much what you're going to find here." That's basically what the people are like here. On the way back on the same day, someone else who had seen me the night before on the Tonight Show, who had lived in the Midwest, stopped me and asked me almost the same question. She said, "You live here?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, my husband and I are moving here and we're looking for a school." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like here?" I said, "What are they like in Chicago where you live?" She said, "Oh," she said, "it's the Midwest." She said, "People are very friendly, they're open, they open their homes to you, they're very loving, they're very kind." She said, "It's a wonderful place." She said, "I love that, I'm going to really miss that." I said, "That's pretty much what you're going to find here." It's what you expect, it's what you think about that expands. It's what Emerson taught us. The ancestor to every action is a thought. Change your thoughts, and you change your world. Change your expectations, and you change around what you begin to manifest and see showing up in your life. Thank you very much.
The ego is not worth defending. And we all spend a lot of our time defending this thing that says, well, you know, I am what I do have, and I have to get more things, and if I don't have as much as they do, then they're going to... And we go through our lives doing all of this stuff, and what it does is it brings us to a point where we no longer have something, or our reputation is gone or taken away from us, or somebody steals it, and what happens to us? Or when we retire, or, you know, I no longer can do things, so now people get over a certain age and they just feel like, you know, I've declined and so on. There's nothing in the DNA that says you have to decline ever in your life. You don't have to decline, and your DNA is over 600,000 years old.
So then why do we have it, though? Why do we have it?
We have it because it works. It works at getting ourselves believing that we're better than other people instead of just allowing ourselves to be free. And it's like Taoism. The Tao teaches us to like unpeel the onion, unpeel layers to get to the essence of the Tao is emptiness. Getting to that place of emptiness. That's like the supreme place to get to, where you're just empty of all of that. And then you're free. And then guess what? All of the things that you wanted so desperately when you were so ego-dominated before begin to show up in your life in larger and larger and larger amounts.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. If you want some amazing Louise Hay motivation, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Many times, or you've read or listened on the tapes, that loving yourself is the most powerful thing we can do. Then everything flows. Everything flows beautifully.